Hello everyone, Erica here again. Sorry you can't see me, but I'm going to give you another hack based on my, I suppose, process that I go through when I write literature reviews. I do these quite often, usually because I do them for research papers that I'm writing, or because government might hire me to undertake a literature review for a particular group, for instance, teachers. So what I want to do today is talk to you about literature reviews, but use the diagram, the hack that I gave you last week on the pre-empirical stage. Use that diagram to show you how you can flesh that out in relation to the process for a lit review and for working up a proposal in general. I've sat down and done a bit of a brainstorm based on a literature review I undertook on virtual reality and school education last year, and that was a commissioned literature review specifically written for teachers. But I want to tell you how I went about that literature review. Obviously I'm a researcher in the field, so I know a bit already, but really when you do literature reviews you need to think about a whole lot of issues, and that hack that I gave you last week on the pre-empirical stage, the diagram, can help you do that, can help you work systematically through those issues. And if you're a person that likes to brainstorm or do mind maps or to plan out the process of what you're going to do before you actually undertake it, then this is very handy. All research is systematic activity, it's systematic inquiry made public, and so the more systematic we are, the better. And that's why I find diagrams like this help. So let me just walk you through what I've done. Here's the diagram from last week. Here's me kind of mind mapping with it. And then what I've also given you under this week's hack is the actual lit review, so you can have a look at it. Have a look at an example that was written for a particular population, teachers, last year on a particular topic. Okay, first of all, I think about putting my topic in the topic box. Well, the topic was given to me by the Department of Education. They said, we want you to write a literature review on virtual reality and learning in schools, and we want you to explain what virtual reality is for teachers. So kind of an introductory literature review. So we want some explanation and we want the evidence. So that's great. So I put that in my topic box. Generally, I could probably say that a number of different ways. I could have said virtual reality for teachers, or virtual reality for learning in schools, or virtual reality and how to use this in schools for learning and student engagement. That could have been a topic as well. But basically the key words are there: virtual reality, learning, schools, and it's for teachers. Okay. So I put that in my topic box, and then I go and I think, well, you know, I do know a little bit about this area, but let's just think about it a bit more systematically. What disciplines, what subject areas inform the research? What inform the research? And I know that there's a literature, some people from education write on this. It's called educational technology, or EdTech. We know that some computer scientists have written about this. I know, for instance, psychologists are interested in the notions of this type of technology, and you know, when you put the virtual reality headset on, what immersion does to people, what a sense of presence in the virtual space does for people. So psychologists are interested, neuroscientists are interested in what happens to your brain when you put a virtual reality headset on, and there are legal issues as well, legal issues around the way these environments are created, the kind of contents used, but also duty of care issues for people. So when big tech companies put these technologies out, there's always occupational health and safety documents that go with these, and so that leads me to issues around safety, ethics and the law. Okay, so I know that they're the discipline areas that inform it, but I want to make sure, you can see at the bottom of the diagram under the discipline areas, I want to make sure I use the right databases and the right keywords, such as virtual reality and immersive virtual reality, immersion, children, for instance, K-12, primary or elementary school. I want to put those correct keywords in the right database, because different disciplines do research on virtual reality, I want to make sure that I'm searching the databases for those disciplines. So the databases that computer scientists use are different to the ones that educators use or psychologists use. So I want to make sure that I'm just across those databases and I understand which ones are the best to use to search for my literature. So I've written that down, so that's a little reminder for me. Make sure that I search all the databases and do it systematically using the same keywords and keep a list of those keywords. Okay, so I've done that. Then I really want to think, okay, that's my topic. These are the disciplines that I know inform it. You know, why would I want to be interested in this anyway? Like, I've got to make a case that, you know, it's an important topic to investigate. And so what I've done under the context at the top, I've thought about, well, you know, why do I want to do this? Why do I want to do this literature review? Why would anyone want to research in this area? And I've written a couple of dot points down, which can form the beginning of my introduction to my literature review, I suppose, the context, which is why the research question or the research problem, the research literature, the topic is important. Why is it important? Why should we want to explore it? And, you know, there's a couple of things that came to mind immediately. There's other things as well, but this is what I've just jotted down. So since 2014, there's been a release of these VR headsets, from very cheap versions to very expensive ones, but they weren't really available before that. And 3 million kids now have tried VR, have tried Google expeditions, the kind of cardboard, Google cardboard expeditions in the world. So, you know, it's growing, growing numbers of young people and children are using it in schools and for leisure. Teachers in schools are increasingly being marketed to by technology companies. There's very good kind of literature on this, how companies work with schools and are marketing towards schools. However, you know, there's very little in terms of evidence about whether this kind of technology is good for learning, and there's no guidelines really on safety for kids, or for young people, I should say, to be more formal. Okay, so here's a couple of reasons why we'd want to explore it, why we want to write a literature review for teachers, to give them some information. Your literature review, of course, will be for a slightly different audience, but always think about the audience. The context sets up why the topic's important. So I go and do that. So I've got my topic, I've nailed that, I've really thought about the disciplines that inform that. And in fact, as I read, I might add to those disciplines as new ones emerge, things that I hadn't thought about before, or where a literature comes from a different topic. For instance, cultural studies might actually emerge, or digital humanities might emerge there in the discipline area. I don't know. So I'll add to those. And then I really want to go down and I want to think about the literature. Okay, so what do I want to do? Well, you know, this thing called virtual reality, what is it? I mean, I know what it is, but will teachers know what it is? Will my audience know? And you can never assume that your audience will know. So make sure you define terms and concepts and ideas from the literature. Don't make them up yourself. So you need to read the literature to see how they define the key concepts and terms. It's often good to keep a glossary for yourself, and actually just make sure where there's definitions of terms, whether they're consistent or not, or whether some definitions are better than others. And in some cases in my field, there's real contestation around particular terms. So they're still arguing about what things mean, and that's important for the reader to know. So define terms and ideas using the literature. So I want to think about the literature in that way. I want to understand, you know, what research has already been done on my topic around virtual reality and learning. Now, that could be learning in schools or broader than that, often takes in higher education, but particularly what theoretical and empirical research is. So are there any theoretical frameworks that could be useful for me to understand learning and explain that to teachers, or how you can use the technology for learning? And are there any studies that demonstrate this? And in my case, with this particular literature review, which you can find under Hack 2, in my case, I was interested in the theoretical framework from older types of virtual reality, the ones before the headsets. And I only wanted to cover empirical literature on school education. There's a lot going on in the higher education space, because a lot of lecturers do kind of experiments on their computer science students. And so there's kind of very, you know, kind of proliferation of studies in higher education or on university students. But I really wanted to see what had been done with school students. So That was the empirical focus. So ask yourself, if I'm going to actually do this topic, these are the things I want to find out, what research has been done conceptually and empirically. And then I wanted to look at, what had happened in schools, and it narrowed it right down when I looked at K to 12 or foundation to 12 or school education, elementary or primary school. These are kind of secondary school. These are keywords that I use to search. It really narrowed it down to, a very distinct set of studies because, this is a relatively recent technology. So research is just emerging in those contexts, school contexts. And of course, one thing I was interested in was around ethics and safety. So what advice to give teachers? So what ethical or safety issues are there? Okay, so once I'd done my lit review and I kind of organised it, you can see how it's organised around these particular sets of, I suppose, literature searches or specific foci in the literature searches. So the literature reviews organised around these topics. And then you can see in the very last part of that literature review, I go, well, what's this tell us? Well, we know the gaps are there's no longitudinal studies or studies over time on the effects of immersion in young people or studies over time on the effects on learning with this technology. So that's a gap. There's very few studies and no pedagogical frameworks, or only some emerging now, around the pedagogies or how you actually look at the instructional strategies in relation to curriculum and the use of the technology, and very little knowledge around ethics and safety. So that's just beginning to come out of the literature now. So I could take any one of those gaps and turn them into a research question that I could explore for a study. So it might be, if we were to do that, say, what are the effects of immersion or being in the headset over time or longitudinally for young people or for students in secondary schools, for instance. Or I could say, what type of instructional strategies are teachers using in relation to virtual reality technologies in primary schools? That could be a question that I could explore and research. Or I could say, what ethical frameworks might best suit or might best be used by teachers to ensure safe and ethical research or ethical practice, classroom practice with students and with school or in school communities. So I can turn any of those into a research question, and any of those would be a great study for a master's or a PhD. I probably wouldn't try all of them. I'd hone in on one of interest. So I hope that little hack helps. So why don't you try writing your diagram up like this? You can do it on a computer, or you can do it like I've done it in this messy fashion. Try drawing it up and doing a bit of a brainstorm based on what you know already. Some people have already contacted me and said, look, I'm interested in this area, so why not do that? And then when you start to do your literature searches, you can begin to fill this in. You begin to draft this diagram up. And will not only help you think systematically through about what you've done, but it'll help you structure your literature review in the end. So if you'd like to do that, and if you're game, you could share that on discussion forum. You could share your initial brainstorm on discussion forum. I'll share this one on there too, and obviously it'll be under the hack for this week. And remember, I'm doing this retrospectively. I've already written the lit review, so it's reasonably easy for me to fill this out. But when you do it, you'll start, and it will change over time. It will change over the course of over the course of this course, and obviously over the course of higher education study if you're doing a master's or a PhD. Thank you. I hope some people can share their examples of their brainstorms. That would be fantastic, because we should all learn from each other in this space. I enjoy that. And I look forward to hopefully hearing about your research interests through your brainstorm on discussion forum this week. Over and out from Erica.